The New Zealand Forest Owners Association has drafted an open letter to the Prime Minister asking her to step in and allow a proper consultation process for the bill. This is the Foresters' Regulation of Log Traders and Forestry Advisors Amendment Bill. It's going to oppose price, market and harvest controls over forestry exports, effectively subsidising domestic processing by directing log supplies to local sawmills, no matter how inefficient these mills are, or whether they can compete in an overseas timber market. Newly appointed National Party spokesperson for forestry and, of course, MP for Clutha-Southland, Hamish Walker joins us now. Good evening, sir.
Evening, Sarah. Evening, viewers.
Now, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Lots of new portfolios for you, and I'm sure you'll be excited to sink your teeth into this one. Why do you have valid concerns about it being rushed and impractical, Hamish?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head at the start. It's been a completely rushed process so far. I mean, the bill was put through on budget day during one of the worst crises we've ever faced as a country with COVID, and there's just no justifiable reason for the urgency. The bill's going quicker than the Christchurch earthquake firearm laws. There's been no reasonable level of consultation with the industry. They were told 5 to 8 days before the Select Committee submission date where we heard from submitters, so they didn't even have time to consult each other. It's a terrible bill. We heard from round about 650 submitters. Only 11 out of 650 supported the bill. It basically creates a whole heap of new red tape regulation requiring everyone in the forestry industry to be registered. That includes, for example, machine operators, or if you work at a forestry company, an admin person. So the real scary part, though, is it enables the minister to set a tariff for log exporters. That's the really scary part, because what's next? Is he going to do that in the meat and the milk sector? So that's the really scary part of the bill, forcing domestic forest owners. There's about 15,000 of them in New Zealand. So they think long term. They're thinking sort of an average harvest is sort of 25 to 30 years, but often they think a number of rotations ahead, 90 to 100 years. So this is going to create red tape, regulation, and just a lot of uncertainty and decreased confidence in the sector.
It's very counterproductive, this involvement in a free market where we're putting tariffs on our exports. It seems absolutely ridiculous, Hamish. But rushing bills through is nothing new for this government. But in terms of this next level of interfering in market forces, and of course, contradictory between our trade for economic recovery, and of course their environmental stance, why do you believe they're trying to rush this through?
I think he's trying to solve. There's probably a few sawmillers in Northland who have struggled with supply of logs, but if you look at the reason why, there's a couple of reasons. 4 or 5 years ago, they harvested a lot of trees in Northland because the price was quite good back then. The other aspect is the sort of next 15, 20 years, because of that heavy harvesting 4 or 5, 6 years ago, they are going to have a lull in the market. He's basically trying to fix the Northland problem throughout the industry. But another possible fix raised by some submitters is that every port in New Zealand has the same policy in terms of who's allowed to put their logs on the wharfs. Basically, it's long-term log suppliers, trusted forestry suppliers. But Northport, the port in Whangarei, is the only port that allows basically anyone, any Tom, Dick and Harry, to come along and put your logs on the wharf. So if Northport possibly implemented a policy where they only supply trusted suppliers like every other port in New Zealand, that could be a potential fix. But I had Minister Jones in front of the Select Committee last Thursday, and I put all of these questions to him like the industry's been doing. He couldn't answer them, and you're spot on. It could result in a breach of New Zealand's World Trade Agreement by forcing logs to be sent domestically at a subsidised price. So there's huge concern. I was with a couple of logging gangs yesterday in West Otago. They're absolutely pulling their hair out because the minister's not listening. It's an abuse of power by putting it through a very rushed process, and also too, this type of bill would normally go to the Primary Production Select Committee, where it's a split majority, so 4 national, 4 government, but he's put it through the Environment Select Committee for no other reason that the government's got a majority on it.
And on that, Minister O'Connor said that he wanted to rural-proof policies. We heard from Kerry Worsnop from Gisborne, who's tearing her hair out and having very sleepless nights about what this is going to do to our rural communities. One question she wanted me to put to Shane Jones was, are you really authentic about being the Regional Development Minister? How is he getting on with this support in the regions?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, if you look at New Zealand's First, quite clearly they say one thing during the campaign and then do another. But just on the rural proofing policy, I actually asked Minister O'Connor during the Primary Production Select Committee about a year ago, can you, Minister, or any of your officials point to any evidence where you've put a rural proofing ruler over any of your policies like you claim you would during the 2017 election? And he said no, he couldn't. So the proof's in the pudding. They like to talk big, but when it comes to actual policy, they don't really listen to anyone. As about 639 out of 650 submitters are against this bill for good reason.
Hamish, just before you go, I know the rural contractors have been actively on the streets in Queenstown. Can you tell us about the recruitment from tourism into the primary sector?
Yeah, so they're in Queenstown yesterday. They're in town now today. I was actually talking to them about 2 hours ago. So they had probably 150 people set back, so SIT. They're basically trying to get displaced tourism workers into the agricultural sector. So they run an expo yesterday in Queenstown, had about 150 through it. Today I think they had 60 or 70 through it, which is good. I think it's an awesome opportunity for anyone that even remotely thought about getting into the ag sector to give it a crack. There's a lot more opportunities than just, your typical farming. You can be a scientist, a marketer, you can go milking, you can get into meat, you can get into forestry. There's awesome opportunity. So they were they weren't sort of too impressed or too disappointed with the numbers, sort of as expected. But hopefully in the coming weeks they'll get a few people out of the expo yesterday and today in town now.
Fantastic. Keep up the great work, Hamish, and everything that you're doing there for your electorate of Clutha-Southland and your new portfolios. We look forward to talking to you leading into this wonderful 2020 election, which is now 100 days away.
This is Sarah's Country.